Now, technically, number 30 is supposed to be one of the hardest questions in the calculator section. It's the last multiple choice question. So it's supposed to be really hard. And maybe you do genuinely look at this and are totally confused. But from my perspective as a tutor, this is actually really, really easy. It requires just a little bit of memorization, and then you can get this question right in seconds. So if you look at the story, look at the graph, you're going to be confused, that's fine. But remember, we can kind of work backwards sometimes and use the answer choices to help us better understand the question. In this case, these answer choices are basically the same equation, just with different positives and negatives. Those crazy decimals don't change either. So this is entirely about positives and negatives. And we should see that these equations follow the standard form of a quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c. This is the version of a quadratic equation that we use when we want to use quadratic formula or just basically like write an equation of a quadratic. This is kind of what we do. It's standard form. And what it does is it tells us two very important things about quadratics, about the resulting parabola, okay? So the first piece is that C is the y-intercept, always. And how do we know that? Well, remember, all y-intercepts have an x-coordinate of 0, right? So if we just plugged 0 in for all of the x's, then the only thing left would be the C term, this piece that doesn't have any x's. So why does that help us here? Well, if we kind of make a parabola out of this thing, these dots, we can see a rough y-intercept right here. And I don't know exactly what it is. I mean, it's hard to estimate something like that, but I do know that it's positive, right? Because it's positive 700 and whatever. So I know from that the choices A and B here have to be wrong. There's no way it could be a negative y-intercept. So this piece is causing the problem. That gets us down to 2. Now we should look at A. A, if you've taken pre-calculus or calculus, kind of tells us what's called the concavity of the parabola. But if that doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry about it. I'm going to put it in a much simpler way. A tells us the smiliness or frowniness of the parabola. So basically, if A is positive, you're going to have a smile, a parabola that opens up like a smile. If A is negative, you're going to have a frown, a parabola that opens downwards. That's it. So this parabola clearly opens down, so this has to have a negative A, which is in choice D, right? So this number in choice C is what makes it wrong. That's a positive value for A, so that parabola would open like this, like a smile. The B term, the middle piece, doesn't matter at all. There are some that are positive, some that are negative, but it didn't tell us anything useful just by looking at the equation. So these two pieces are really important. You need to memorize this if you want to very quickly get some quadratic questions correct on the SAT. A is the smiliness or frowniness. C is the y-intercept. And then we can manipulate that equation into other forms to learn other things like the roots or the x-intercepts. If we factor, we can do complete the square to find the vertex, but we do not need to do that for this question. It's purely just about the positives and negatives on the A term and the C term. And that hard question suddenly became much, much easier just by memorizing a little bit of a fact.